This thing staged, right? This was all set up. Trying to make them understand it was real was pretty much impossible.
Put that as a possibility that it was staged. I have a lot of questions just like you do. They changed the dates, no problem. The assassination attempt is when? When is the RNC? What did they want to do? Did they want there to be shambles before the RNC? Did they want right now at the RNC where the energy is high, the confidence is high? Was this intentional? Oh, it's Iran. Iran was really behind this and trying to get everybody to look this way instead of why don't we investigate what the Secret Service got wrong? I think they're going to do whatever they can the next 112 days or whatever days are left to make sure he doesn't get in there.
The language on both sides has to be dialed down.
We're living in an unsafe world, and I'm not going to apologize to somebody sitting across the pond about our Second Amendment. And
other
wait
people
for help
took it
to
as a veiled threat. The clear implication is, don't muck around with me, I'll shoot you. Former President Donald Trump came within an inch of his life last weekend. What kind of a country would America now be if he hadn't looked the other way? His running mate, J.D. Vance, is an America First absolutist who backs Israel but wants no more aid to Ukraine. What's the strategic play behind his appointment? Trump says he'll now be a unifying force, but is he capable of doing that? And will President Biden still be the Democratic nominee in November? My next guest is a big dog with big opinions on all the big questions. Returning to Uncensored, the Valuetainment founder and host of PBD podcast, Patrick Bet-David. Great to have you back, Patrick. How are you?
Great. How you doing?
Well, you know what? I feel a little bit discombobulated. I feel like there's a lot going on in the world and has been now for a sustained period of time. You know, we had the pandemic, we had war in Ukraine, we've had war in Gaza, we've had cost of living crisis sweeping the world. And now we have the attempted assassination, a very nearly successful attempted assassination of a man who was president of the United States only several years ago and may well be again. It's all disconcerting, isn't it? What was your reaction when you heard about what had happened to Donald Trump?
You know, it's one of those days like when I was sitting at Seasons 52 in Plano, Texas, when I heard that Kobe Bryant died and nobody believed that. I'm like, what are you talking about? You know, we're sitting there and I get the news. We're coming back from watching a movie, Fly Me to the Moon in the Hamptons, and we're with our family. And then all of a sudden, Vinny says, Pat, somebody shot Trump's ear. I said, what? And then we pull up the video. Nobody believes it. And then that's when all the commentary comes out. And we did a video about it and reacting to it. But I mean, obviously, blown away for that to be taking place, but at the same time, not surprised because we've been talking about this for the last 12 months where I said the most important thing with the president right now is protection. The most important. You have to make sure you quality control the people that you're relying to protect you. There's almost like there's a reason why Messi has a specific person that protects him that's above and beyond whatever, you know, Inter Miami may offer him. So you can't just rely on Secret Service to do their jobs. I think you need to go above and beyond, especially knowing that the Secret Service director is a Secret Service of the existing president who has had the DOJ go after you, who has tried to silence you. What makes you think they're going to fully give you their best people to protect you? Yeah, I would be a little bit more paranoid than the team was.
You know, it's interesting. I got into this with Cenk Uygur yesterday, where he got very agitated when I said I found what happened very odd. And he immediately started lambasting me as a conspiracy theorist and saying the Secret Service were in on it and all this kind of thing. I said, no, I'm not saying any of those things. Here's what I'm saying very clearly. It is incredibly strange to me and inexplicable that a 20-year-old kid with an AR-15 can clamber onto the roof in full view of the public, who start alerting authorities as much as 2 minutes before he fires this gun, and then gets to the perfect vantage point to shoot Donald Trump from 150 meters. And the fact he's able to let off 8 rounds, even with snipers all apparently looking at him at the time. Again, all of this is very odd, as is the fact that once he was taken down by the Secret Service, who did react very quickly to their credit, they then allowed him to stand back up. And they put a female agent in front of him who was clearly a lot shorter than he was, thereby exposing his whole head and upper torso to potentially a shot from another shooter had there been one. Rather than doing what they did with Reagan, for example, when they rushed him straight into the limo and got rid of him and took him to hospital. None of this makes sense to me. It really is an inexplicable chain of events that Donald Trump, who is, one of the most threatened people in American public life, who's been president and is likely to be again, is at a public presidential rally months before an election, and any of that chain of events is able to happen.
Piers, we were a half an inch away from civil war. We were a head not turning this way from a civil war. We've all seen the videos. And by the way, there is nothing wrong with questioning anything. One of the videos we showed is a reporter going around in California asking people, what do you think about the assassination attempt on the president? And everybody this person asked in California, everybody said, oh, it was a setup.
Well, we actually, I'll tell you what, Patrick, let me stop you, because we actually have that. Let me play that so that viewers know what you're talking about.
Sure, go for it.
Oh, it's a false flag.
False flag.
Yeah, false flag.
Somebody died and 2 people injured. What do you think about that?
False flag.
False flag.
I thought it was magnificently staged. It was professionally done.
Wait. Staged by who?
Oh, by Mr. Trump, of course.
I think this whole thing is staged.
No.
Please don't. We're so anti-Trump. I don't even want to.
Was it a bad thing, though? Was it a bad thing? Would you condemn it?
Oh, that he got shot at? Of course. Yeah. Was it staged? Probably.
One person died in the crowd, 2 critically injured. What happened there?
Small price. It wouldn't matter to Trump. Do you think he cares if people die for him to be elected? Put a little scratch on his ear, threw a little blood on his face.
Now, so you think that they planned from 130 yards away to shoot off the corner of his ear?
And they never shot off the corner of his ear. That was all done by the people hanging around.
What about the people that died what about the father that died in the stand, as well as the others that were critically injured?
I don't know. I can't tell.
What would you say our reasoning is for saying that, or we have no reasoning?
Just the feeling. Just the feeling.
If Trump is involved, it's a fraud.
I mean, it's staggering to me to hear that. And yet I had first-hand experience in the UK from various people that I encountered within 24 hours of what happened, immediately saying to me, because they recognized me and knew I'd been covering this, they said, this thing's staged, right? This was all set up. And I was like, what are you talking about? Of course it wasn't set up. But trying to make them understand it was real was pretty much impossible.
But here's what I don't have a problem with. I don't have a problem with them saying that. I'm okay with that, and put that as a possibility that it was staged. Now, the possibility of being staged may be 0.1%, but we ought to put it out there as maybe this is possibility. Fine, give your argument. But at the same time, I have a lot of questions just like you do. The story that came out with the second shooter, the story that came out with the FBI power washing all the stuff on the top of the building after the shooter was gone, and maybe they don't have any residual effects of the shots fired. Maybe there's no residual effects. That's not a hard thing for us to find. They found the phone. You mean to tell me you didn't find anything in the phone on what was being said? We can't expect why the Secret Service, when I go online and I Google President Joe Biden's Secret Service team and go to images, try to find one female, that's one of his, you will not be able to find it. I went online and looked at all his team. Everybody is a white male. I thought President Biden was about DEI and, underrepresented. How come he doesn't have a single person that's transgender or lesbian, gay? How come he doesn't have somebody from that community representing him? And forget about why is it that every one of his Secret Service members are white male, let alone for Trump, when they're being pushed into it, 3, 4, 5 of them were women. This is an area where DEI is being exposed in ways that we just got a story yesterday.
Look, I don't have a problem with women in the Secret Service. They just have to be as good as the men, right? And they have to be up to the job. What was pretty horrifying was the agent that you saw, who's unfortunately for her gone viral, who can't even put a gun in a holster in that environment. And you're like, how on earth have you got into the Secret Service? This is supposed to be the absolute elite of the elite of protection people in the world. And she can't put a gun in a holster twice as she's trying to protect a president who's just been shot.
But think about it from this way. Many, many years ago, when I'm running an office and I had 100 agents that are selling insurance, and one of my agents would come in and say, I have a family member that wants me, got a very complicated financial situation. Their net worth is $10 million. Can you have somebody come and sit down with them? I would choose who I would send to go meet with the family that is the biggest expert in our office that knows how to handle a situation like that, right? I choose how to match up the right agent advisor with the right appointment. The director of Secret Service has the ability to match up the best agents who are the most experienced one against the person that's attracting the biggest audience, which is President Trump. You ought to send the right people to protect. Why did you not? By the way, this is the same person that in 2022, when asked about the text exchange between the Bidens during J6, all of a sudden she's like, oh, the text exchange disappeared. We lost it. But look, we're not trying to do anything, that's negative, or we're not trying to hide anything from the public. So I have a very hard time. And every one of these questions need to be asked because it's a little bit disturbing when all these stories are coming up. By the way, specifically when? So let's actually think like the devil's advocate. Let's actually think if they were trying to do something, something negative or something that, manipulative to kind of hurt the president. So the judge comes out and says, we're going to pick what's going to happen to the president a few days before RNC, July 11th. Okay, no problem. They changed the dates. No problem. The assassination attempt is when? When is the RNC? What did they want to do? Did they want there to be shambles before the RNC? Did they want right now at the RNC where the energy is high, the confidence is high with who they have chosen as their nominee, which is Trump, and you see a unification coming up. Nikki Haley got up there. DeSantis got up there. Vivek got up there. Elon Musk just said he's going to get $45 million a month to a super PAC before now and the end of the year. Bunch of billionaires are coming out there. Conversations with a Jamie Dimon, conversations with an RFK, the video that was leaked. You know how bad this is for the DNC? If the same person, Vivek, the same folks that are saying this was staged, we ought to also ask, was this intentional to do it right before the RNC? That question should also be on the table.
I just think all questions are perfectly legitimate when we know so little answers. There's no motive has been established, no real information about this shooter or why a 20-year-old kid would want to kill Donald Trump. We just don't know anything about it. And very little, very oddly, very little is emerging about him or motivation or anything. What happens here? I mean, there are lots of consequences. Let's start, first of all, the Secret Service. I don't understand how the Secretary Cheetle, the one in charge of the Secret Service, has not yet been fired. The director, I'm sorry, not Secretary. The director of the Secret Service, Cheetle. How is she not being fired yet?
How is she not being fired? Because Mayorkas said, we trust her, we have her back 100% with what she's doing. And she said, no, I'm still going to be doing the job. And by the way, when they asked the director of Secret Service for specifically the RNC, I don't know exactly her name, but she was one of the ones that was for Secret Service responsible for the RNC. She was asked, are you guys going to be making any adjustments in your approach at the RNC? No, we're taking the same exact approach. What do you mean you're taking the same exact approach? So let me get this straight. In any sporting event, you're a fan of Ronaldo, you're a fan of Man U, you're a fan of soccer, you're a fan of rugby, certain sports we watch. What do players say after a loss? They say we have to make certain adjustments. You mean to tell me if in sports we make adjustments, if in business we make adjustments, if a negotiation doesn't go right, we make adjustments, if in parenting we make adjustments, if in our marriage we make adjustments, in our health we make adjustments, but not when it comes down to an assassination attempt on the president. That totally makes sense because what's the big deal, right? It's just an assassination attempt. We don't need to make any adjustments. We know what we're doing. And then 3, 4, 5 days later, you want to deflect and confuse the American people and say, oh, it's Iran. Iran was really behind this and trying to get everybody to look this way instead of why don't we investigate what the Secret Service got wrong? There was something I was said the other day that I really liked, and I would love to quote who said this. The question was the following. How come the president doesn't fire anybody? Everybody bitched and moaned about the fact that Trump fired a lot of people. How come President Biden doesn't fire anyone?
I think it was Elon Musk. I think Elon Musk said it, actually.
I think Elon Musk said the fact that how come President Biden doesn't fire anybody? It's a very valid question. In corporate environment, she would be fired like this,
also,
but unfortunately,
this is politics. As the head of the Secret Service, you have one job, preserving the life of the president. That is your job. You're in charge of a very large team. I mean, I once interviewed, and it was an incredibly powerful interview, Clint Hill, who was a member of the Secret Service detail on the day Kennedy got shot and killed. And he was Jackie Kennedy's personal bodyguard. He's the one you see jumping on the back of the car after the first shot goes off. And then he slightly stumbles. And he was very tearful with me because every day he thinks about, had he not stumbled, could he have taken the second bullet and saved JFK's life? So it was a very powerful interview. I think there were less than 10 people on that detail in Dallas that day. That was how big the Secret Service protection squad was for the president. There's now over 300. I've been around Donald Trump when he's landed at Stansted Airport in the UK. It's unbelievable what goes on. And when he takes off, the whole backup security and so on. I've been at Mar-a-Lago when it's been swarmed with Secret Service and so on. What I found extraordinary about what happened at the shooting was, A, there didn't seem to be many Secret Service agents there, given where we are in this election cycle and how polarizing Trump is. B, a lot of them seemed to be female. And yet when he appeared at the RNC, he was surrounded by a lot of very large men and no women in sight at all. Who made that decision? Why did they make that decision? Are they acknowledging that the female agents who were there that day were part of the problem? And if so, why were they put there in the first place? And so on and so on. These are all incredibly serious questions. I agree with you. If that bullet had been literally half an inch one way nearer Trump's head, he'd be dead. And if Donald Trump had been killed, all hell would have broken loose in America. I genuinely believe that. It would have been a tinderbox. And I think that we've very fortunately got to a place where he somehow miraculously survived. But heads should roll, and the first head should be the director of Secret Service. Let me move, Patrick, to another consequence of this, which is soaring support for Trump, both in the polls, but also just anecdotally, just so many people I know saying, you know what, given the state of Biden before this anyway, and his refusal to pull out of the race despite clearly being unfit for the office now, Trump's act of defiance in standing up and putting his arm up to the air and saying, fight, 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 has really resonated with Americans who saw in a moment of unbelievable horror a guy who showed real leadership, real defiance, a real strength of character and real personal courage. That, to me, I've said this since it happened, in my estimation, has now propelled him back to the White House. I see no way, if he stays alive, and God forbid anyone else tries to copycat this, but if Trump is there on election day, he wins, doesn't he?
I think if Joe Biden somehow, some way was able to get the Supreme Court to amend the Constitution and allow a president to get a third term, neither a Bill Clinton or a Barack Obama in their prime could beat a Trump today. Yeah. Neither one of them. Neither a Barack Obama or Bill Clinton. However, that's assuming everything's going to be fair play moving forward. That's assuming it's going to be fair play, which we know it's not going to be fair play.
What more can they do, Patrick? Just think about this logically, right? Trump was, completely buried politically 18 months ago. And then the left decided to weaponize the justice system against him in the most ridiculously over-the-top manner. And the first case they used is the Stormy Daniels payment case, which was such a pathetic, low-grade thing to drag a former president through a criminal court over. The conviction got him another $150 million in 10 days in fundraising, and absolutely nobody took it seriously whatsoever. And it had no damage to his reputation or his popularity whatsoever. So that all backfired. They've tried to take him off ballots in various states. That hasn't worked. We've had someone try to shoot him now. That hasn't worked either, thank God. But they've literally chucked everything that they can think of, both the Democrats, the liberals, lunatics. I mean, you put it all together, this has been one of the most concerted attempts to thwart somebody becoming president again I've ever seen anywhere in the world. And yet there he is, standing now as the clear favourite to go and win. I don't think there's anything the Democrats can now throw at him that will touch the sides. I really don't.
See, it's good to say that, and it's coming from a great place of optimism. But then there are people that get paid to think about what the enemy would do to divide and conquer and play their own games. Look, the New England Patriots one year almost went undefeated. They were 16-0, but they lost to the Giants. So you can't sit there and assume that all these things are going to be perfect and we're going to win. Nobody's going to get in our way. That's not how this thing works. I think for me, you have to think, again, what is at stake for the left? What is at stake for the left if Trump gets in on a second term? Let's kind of talk about this. Elon Musk buys Twitter, turns it into X. We all saw Barry Weiss and Matt Taibbi with Twitter files. What did we learn about the involvement of the New York Post tweet, couple days before the election? What did we learn about Biden's camp communicating with Twitter at the time saying you can't allow this to happen? What did we learn about it? They were involved. So what if Trump gets in and all of a sudden brings in individuals to investigate FBI files? What about if there's CIA files? What about if there's DOJ files? What about if there's Merrick Garland files? What if there's all these files that we see with email that you can't just delete these emails because you're dealing with the government? What if we get access to that information? What would we really learn about this? Could this be one of those situations where, if you remember back in the days, where J. Edgar Hoover was frightened after going after the mob because they had certain intel on him as being a cross-dresser, and at the time that was frowned upon. So it's like the mafia doesn't exist, the mafia doesn't exist, the mafia doesn't exist. Then all of a sudden, Rudy Giuliani goes and finds a professor, I think at Rutgers University, that says if you are going to take the mob down, you have to do with the RICO law. And then he comes in, and next thing you know, we see 240-something mob arrested going in cop cars. Like, what just happened right now with this whole situation? What if that takes place? What if that's what they fear? What if they're worried all this stuff's going to leak? What if they're worried that RFK is going to join Trump's camp and he's going to go after Fauci, NIH, CDC, WHO? What if? These are things you have to consider. So if you thought this protection is at risk, Piers, question for you and your viewers. What would you do if you were the leader of the Democratic Party, knowing everything could potentially be exposed by the guy that has the following that wants that to happen? What would you do to prevent it from being in the office? And by the way, do you think you would stop after what just happened this past Saturday? I'm not going to be in a naive community and say, no, that's it, they're going to let him go in there. I think they're going to do whatever they can the next 112 days or whatever days are left to make sure he doesn't get in there.
I mean, I think the really big question for the Democrats is the thing that's been off the table now for the last few days since the assassination attempt is whether Biden should stay as the Democrat nominee. Most Democrats seem completely torn. The majority I've seen talking out about this seem to think he absolutely can't. I mean, it's sort of ridiculous to think he could do 4 more years in office when he can barely seem to remember what day it is. If they were able to come to their senses, and they would have to bring Biden to his senses, which he may not have the faculty to do. But if they did and they were to replace him, as things stand, the most likely replacement is Kamala Harris, who I think could arguably be even less popular than Joe Biden. She's been a pretty useless vice president. There are others who I think would do a better job, but can they get to the place of nomination? Or is this really, are we seeing the Democrats now in complete converse difference to the Republicans, who've never seemed more united? I mean, this RNC convention this week has been one of unbelievable unity, and Trump at the center of it. Are the Democrats now completely so fragmented that really whatever they do, they're screwed?
Yeah, listen, I mean, think about your Newsom, and you get a phone call. Hey, Newsom, we want to find a way to make you be the nominee. Are you up for it? After the assassination attempt. I'm not feeling well.
I agree.
I think I need to take a mental day off. I think I need to take a break. I think I got COVID. I think I'm sick. You're going to say whatever you can to not go up against Trump today because you're going to postpone till 2028. Yeah. Hey, Michelle Obama, we're thinking about you. Yeah, I'm good being a celebrity right now, hanging out with Jay-Z and Oprah. I don't want to be in there. Hey, Whitmer, maybe Whitmer will do it. Hey, Kamala, maybe Kamala will do it. But that is not their problem. Their problem right now isn't whether they're going to be able to bring in a nominee to beat them. There is this many people that can do it today. This many people. By the way, if you watch the scene, everybody knows what it is to be a parent. And everybody knows what it is to be a son and a daughter. Most people do. If you're the son and a daughter and you have a loving relationship with your father, somebody you admire, all people need to do is to go see when President Trump walked into the RNC with the badge with the little Band-Aid on his ear, and you can tell it wasn't the typical Trump. It wasn't the Trump that comes in with the head held high and look who I am. It was a very different Trump. This is not the same human being anymore. Listen, there was a book written many years ago, Piers, by a guy named David and Goliath, and he talks about what happens to human beings when they have a close call with death. You're no longer the same person anymore. You're just not. You're a completely different human being. And then when he walks up and he's shaking hands with Tucker, then he shakes hands with Byron Donald, then he shakes his son's hand with his left hand. and you see Junior makes eye contact with his dad, replay that. Every son, every father, every parent will see the pain of that son looking at his hero, saying, I almost lost my dad. Everybody relates to that. Now, maybe the people on the left that are like, man, this is ridiculous. This is heartbreaking. I can't even, stomach this, watching this. I feel the pain, but I can't say that publicly because there's no way I'm going to be supportive of this. But the average libertarian, independent, a person in the middle is going to sit there and say, you know what? I'm in with this guy. So this is a very problematic season for the left. And the only way they can do it is not with a candidate. It's with a negative, deceptive strategy to get him out. And I'm not going to put anything else out there, but you cannot sit there and not think on the paranoid side that what they're capable of doing.
It's an extraordinary state of affairs. Riveting, fascinating, shocking, concerning, all of those things. It'd be really interesting to see how this all plays out. Patrick, it's great to have you back on Uncensored. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Now with a view from the RNC in Milwaukee, one of Trump's most passionate supporters, the Republican US Senate candidate for Arizona, Kari Lake. Kari, welcome back to Uncensored. Always good to have you. What's the mood like down there?
I think it's great. I mean, it's, thousands of people who are excited about moving America in a different direction and the potential to bring America back and make it safe, secure, great again. And all of us together in one place with one of our favorite people, President Trump, somebody who's fought so hard for our country, who's willing to stay in the arena, despite, having a lot of people try to knock him down. He keeps standing up and fighting for us. So it's been lovely. I've really enjoyed a lot of the speeches from the politicians and from the regular people, even from people who never were supporters before President Trump. And now they've realized that they've been lied to. They bought into the media narrative, and now they're waking up and saying, wow, actually, President Trump is a good guy. He does want to do good things for our country, for all Americans. And that's what's been really great about some of these speeches.
Where were you when you heard that he'd been shot, and what was your reaction?
I had just come in. I'm running for U.S. Senate in Arizona. I just come in off the campaign trail from an event, and got into the House and was starting. Normally, I try to watch a lot of the rallies. I enjoy them. But I didn't turn it on because I was trying to rush and pack to come to Milwaukee for the convention. And a friend of mine called and said, President Trump's been shot. And she didn't know any details. And what probably lasted 3 or 4 minutes for me to find out that he was able to stand up and was okay. Was the longest 3 or 4 minutes. It felt like hours trying to track down information. Is he okay? And my heart just sunk. And I started praying right away. And then to see him emerge from that and stand up, and that the fact that he turned his head, and by the grace of God, truly by the grace of God, that bullet just nicked him instead of going through his head and taking his life. We're so blessed. I'm so thankful. I just thank God that he is still with us, because we need him. We got a big fight ahead of us. We got a cleanup job here in America after the disastrous administration of Joe Biden, the dead-end destructive policies, the Democrats that have torn our border wide open, caused an invasion on our southern border, caused deadly drugs to pour into our country. Our streets aren't safe. Obviously, we're teetering toward World War III. We need President Trump, and we need his great agenda to move us forward.
What do you think of the fact that for the last 8 years, people on the left at all levels have repeatedly called Donald Trump Adolf Hitler, compared him to Hitler, invoked memories of the Nazis and so on?
I really put a lot of the blame on the fake news media for perpetuating a smear campaign on President Trump. I wonder why people don't like him. I know him personally, and he's a great man. And just as a mom, I appreciate him because he worked so hard to make our country great in his first term, and I know he wants to do it again. And all I can say is the media's perpetual 8-year nonstop lies about President Trump, about his family. It's been nothing but a smear campaign, because they knew how popular President Trump was and how popular he could become. So they tried to drag him down. It's been a character assassination for 8 years at the hands of the fake news media. So no wonder some Americans have fallen for that.
whenever you say the fake news media, I think calling all the media fake news media, especially
No,
from
no,
you,
no,
especially given that you used to be a member of the fake news media, right? You probably would have taken a very dim view of people lambasting all the media as fake news. I mean,
people in the news media who are perpetuating this know who we're talking about. There are some good members of the media, Piers, absolutely. I mean, I walked away from my job because I didn't want to do propaganda. I didn't want to be forced to lie to people. So that's why I walked away. I made the decision to step away from a 7-figure contract at great personal sacrifice because I'm not willing to spread lies, misinformation, and propaganda.
I understand that. I'm just saying that not all the media are fake news, and many of them are very good
100%.
journalists. The other thing that's been the sort of key debate, really, since what happened to President Trump at the weekend, I just think that the language on both sides has got far too incendiary, far too inflammatory, and has to be dialed down. Donald Trump seems to be recognising that. He already looks to me like a slightly different man to the one before what happened at the weekend.
I think if you escape death, you become a different. You have a bit of a change.
Yeah, I'm sure, and I'm eagerly looking forward to his speech on Thursday night because I hope he hits the right tone, which is to bring people together, given how divisive things have got. But I want to play 2 clips to you of you, and I want to see whether, with hindsight, you would regret having used the phraseology you did here. So the first one is from the Republican State Convention in Georgia last year.
I have a message tonight for Merrick Garland and Jack Smith and Joe Biden. And the guys back there in the fake news media, you should listen up as well. This one's for you. If you want to get to President Trump, you're going to have to go through me, and you're going to have to go through 75 million Americans just like me. And I'm going to tell you, most of us are card-carrying members of the NRA. That's not a threat. That's a public service announcement.
And the second one, this is from April, in which you talk about your supporters.
That's why the next 6 months is going to be intense. And we need to strap on our, let's see, what do we want to strap on? We're going to strap on our seatbelt. We're going to put on our helmet, or your Kari Lake ball cap. We are going to put on the armor of God. And maybe strap on a Glock on the side of us just in case. You can put one here and one in the back or one in the front, whatever you guys decide. Because we're not going to be the victims of crime. We're not going to have our Second Amendment taken away. We're certainly not going to have our First Amendment taken away by these tyrants.
So my question about both of those really is whether using language that on the face of it sounds quite threatening and in both cases involves guns, card-carrying members of the NRA, strap yourself up with a Glock and so on. Is that part of the problem? On both sides, right? I'm not just going to single you out. I think a lot of people have used similar language, imagery and so on. Do you think that that kind of thing is just something that ought to be, given that the President Trump was nearly assassinated by somebody with a gun? Is that useful to the debate?
Piers, we have something called the Second Amendment here in the United States of America.
Sure.
And we are allowed to protect ourselves. And given how dangerous the world is, we definitely have to protect ourselves. I mean, look at that guy who shot at President Trump. I mean, that's a perfect example. We're living in an unsafe world. And I'm not going to apologize to somebody sitting across the pond about our Second Amendment. And I'm not going to apologize.
Well, it's not because I'm sitting in England. I mean, I would say this.
I have every right. Okay, I have every right to carry a gun in America to protect myself.
I'm not saying you don't. I'm not saying you don't. I'm just saying that
then what's the problem?
Well, when elected officials talk about that's not a threat, that's a public service announcement
That's not
about
a threat.
Card-carrying member of the NRA. What are you saying there?
What I'm saying is we want to protect ourselves from violence. We want to. We don't want to wait and have to call and
other
wait
people
for help
took it as a veiled threat.
No, it's not. I can't help it if that's how you took it. And
well,
I know
I
every
think,
time I talk
on the
to
other
you,
side, look, Biden talks about putting Trump in the bullseye. I think that was also reprehensible.
No. The difference
but I do think
is,
invoking like strap on a Glock and a card carrying NRA. The clear implication is Don't muck around with me. I'll shoot you.
It's hard. It's really hard for me to explain to you how important the Second Amendment is and our rights.
I know a lot about your Second Amendment.
The difference is I want to be able to protect myself, and my Second Amendment rights give me the opportunity to do that. The left, however, Joe Biden and the media of the last 11, 12 days were actually talking about assassinations and assassinating the president, taking him out. I heard people on the media saying that Joe Biden should have Trump assassinated. That's absolutely wrong. I'm saying we need to protect ourselves in this world. It's not safe. Piers, our streets aren't safe anymore. They're not safe right now. I'm running against a guy who wants to defund the police. Meantime, we're letting 12 million people come in who are criminals.
The point I'm making, should politicians on both sides just be more careful going forward about the kind of language they use?
I believe in the First Amendment, and I definitely believe we shouldn't be threatening anybody.
Right. So is that a yes?
I believe if you're a politician who's threatening somebody or trying to push people to threaten somebody, that's a problem.
But do you think the language on both sides has got too incendiary?
I don't see President Trump trying to threaten anybody. I don't see people in our movement trying to threaten anybody.
Have you talked to President Trump?
I missed his call last night after my speech. I was doing an interview with the media and I missed his call, but he left me a really kind voice message that I appreciated very much. And so I wasn't able to chat with him. I was hoping to talk to him last night, but I was in a throng talking to reporters and I missed the phone call. But I appreciate, if he's watching, thank you, President Trump, for that nice message.
I'm absolutely certain he will be watching. I think Uncensored's on his reminder list for his YouTube
schedule. Yes.
Yeah. And do you think there's any doubt that Donald Trump will now win the election?
I believe he will win. I think he's going to win in huge numbers, a massive victory, and more importantly, it's going to be a victory for our country. I think the world wants President Trump back in the White House. We're not safe. The world's not safe with Joe Biden, who's not totally with it, running the show. We're not safe anymore in our own communities. Our border's wide open. We have a ton of problems right now, and we need President Trump, a man with strength and the intelligence and the courage to do the right thing to get back in there. I'm excited about it. I'm working hard to win my race in the U.S. Senate so we can get President Trump the majority in the Senate. We can accomplish what we need to do for the American people. And I mean this. I want all Americans to do better. Piers, I think we're actually much more united than the media wants people to be. We're much more united. And this country is coming together. And we're going to make sure that we move forward and bring about great change to get us out of the mess we're in with the Joe Biden's disastrous and the Democrats' disastrous policies and get us back on the right track so everybody does better.
Kari Lake, always good to have you on Uncensored. Thank you for coming back on.
Likewise. Thank you, Piers.